This episode goes out to Dax from Trumbowersville, Pennsylvania.
Hi there, Megan Robinson here. Welcome to the 18th episode of the Nightblade Epic podcast. Did you know you can get the Nightblade Epic in hardcover directly from us? They'll even come to you signed by the author for no extra charge, and it costs less than buying it on Amazon. Just go to underrealm.net/volumes. Okay, now it's time for today's episode. Today you're getting chapter 27 and 28 of Nightblade. When we left off, Lauren had just seen Zane and Annis safely out of the city, while she stayed behind to take care of some business. Enjoy!
Nightblade, Chapter 27. Marcus fed them small bowls of gruel served in his cellar. He did not speak overmuch, nor did he linger after giving them their bowls. "If you remain in the city by nightfall, you may sleep here if you wish. Come here to the cellar. I will have my granddaughter fetch you blankets, and open the door if you should knock." He vanished before Lauren could thank him. "I find that one most strange," said Jem. "Why should a cobbler be in the smuggling business?" "Will you keep your voice down?" said Lauren, leaving hers at a murmur. "One should always respect one's host. And why should you expect a cobbler any less than any other? What profession should a smuggler find herself, to your mind?" "Something natural, like a carpet maker, or a brewer, someone who makes big things, the kind of things you can stuff a body in." Lauren shuddered. "A body living or a corpse?" "Either." Jem spooned up the last of his gruel, slurping noisily as it slid down his throat. The boy ate like 3 men twice his size, a symptom, Lauren supposed, of rarely having enough to eat. Then he leaned back in his chair and fixed Lauren with a hard stare. "What is this all about to you, then?" Lauren swallowed her own spoonful, wincing at the slimy way it sat in her mouth. "What do you mean?" "Oh, I heard what you said to Zane, but anyone in your position with half a stone sense would flee this place if they had a chance. Yet you have one, and here you remain. I cannot read the tale of it." Lauren scowled at the table. "A great thief cannot let others rob her and simply accept it. Who would respect her then? And that is the other thing. Look at you. Tall, strong, not ugly, I suppose, though I have seen much prettier." Lauren glared at him. Jem cleared his throat. "Well, and you do not look like you have gone hungry more than a day in your life. So what brings you to Cabras, seeking a pickpocket's life? Who goes about searching for a way outside the king's law?" Lauren scoffed. "You are one to talk. You have lived without it your whole life." "No other opportunity presents itself to one such as me," said Jem. "If I have to lift a coin or slice the occasional purse string, well, that is what I must do. You, though, you could build yourself a little house in the forest by some river. I would wager you could live there fine, with someone to live with and all. Yet you come here with half the villains in the 9 lands breathing down your neck, and you seek to lift purses you do not need." "I would never take from those who had none to spare." Lauren felt her temper rising, blood rushing to her face. "Oh? And what of the girl in the pink dress Auntie sent you after?" "That was Auntie herself." "Yes, but you did not know it till you had your hands on her purse." "She looked rich," Lauren insisted. "Anyone who can afford a dress like that can stand to lose a purse of coins." "Some might say the same about your cloak." Lauren's hand went to the black, velvety fabric, stroking it gently. "This was a gift," she said softly. "Mayhap that pink dress was, too. Or mayhap she only bought that dress from coin that she earned doing things you would never do, that you would think were beneath you. I know many pretty youths with fine clothes who pay for those dresses with coin they earn from rich folk." Lauren pushed her bowl away and stood from the table. "It is time for us to go." "I have an idea I like better," said Jem, rising as well. "Why do you not take those coins that Annis gave you and the ones you had already and buy us a horse so that we may leave this city forever? Find Annis and Zane upon the road, and together we will ride off to the outland kingdoms, where they have never heard of Cabris and we have never heard of them." She slammed her hand down on the table. "I will not leave this alone. No one steals from me, especially not that simpering witch." Jem paused for a moment, letting hang her angry words and all the meaning beneath them. Lauren came to herself and withdrew her hand. "Where do we start?" she said. "What are we looking for?" "My dagger. Or Auntie, though not if I had my wish. She will have put it in the hidey hole." They fetched more rags from Marcus's workshop and wrapped themselves tight. Neither Auntie nor her children had seen that trick the day before, and mayhap it would see them through again. Lauren left her cloak in the cellar, folded neatly beneath the table. She led the way up from the cellar and out the back door, but once they walked upon the street, she let Jem walk in front. Sometimes he led her across the streets, sometimes for a brief stint up a rain gutter and across rooftops that burned hot even through her boots. She could not imagine how he withstood the burning shingles, but then he had probably walked barefoot all his life. Other times their course dipped through the sewers, but never for too long. When they had to enter that dark place, Lauren could feel her pulse thundering through her, every echoing noise like a slap at her ears that sent her jumping in fright. The wandering course let her appreciate the 3 levels of the city as she saw them. Most of those who lived in Cabris only ever knew one, the streets and alleys, which probably held enough danger and darkness for the average person. But above stretched the roofs, Lauren's favorite. There she was like a bird, looking down upon and scoffing at the petty lives of those beneath her feet. The sewers she liked least, and yet she saw their advantage. No one wanted to go there. Only those willing to brave the darkness and wretched smell would venture into the sewers, and thus one might traverse them unseen. After a time, Jem led her on a winding course through the drainage and waste. Oftentimes the tunnel branched in 3 or more directions, but Jem always chose his course without pause. Lauren saw that not all the tunnels channeled the city's waste and refuse. Some ran with water instead. She would not have drunk it, but it certainly smelled better than the other tunnels. Twice they came to long sloping slides that descended farther into the city's underbelly. These always ran with water, and after Jem led the way, Lauren flung herself down them with wild cries of delight. Wind rushed past her ears as she slid down, down, down into the darkness. After the second slide, Jem paused at every intersection. He would sidle carefully up to the corner, poking an ear around it, followed by an eye. Once satisfied, he would lead the way forwards, but Lauren took from his manner that they must not speak. Here the daylight no longer came from holes in the street above. Instead, torches sat in plain iron sconces, casting a dim orange glow every 10 paces or so. Darkness stretched between them, and twice Lauren stumbled over something in the blackness. What it was she could not have said and did not wish to know. "Let us take a torch," she whispered to Jem. "I cannot see a thing." "Neither can they. Take fire with you and you are a target. Light bounces in all directions." He shook his head at her and walked on. Lauren stuck her tongue out at his back. Ever onward they pressed, and ever slower Jem's footsteps became. Finally he stopped at a place where 2 tunnels collided and split off in 4 directions. He waited for Lauren to draw close and then motioned for her to lean down so he could whisper into her ear. "The hidey hole awaits just round the next corner. It will be guarded. We cannot go too close." "Let me see," said Lauren. "Then we may determine our course." Jem nodded and stepped around the corner. Lauren crept behind him, keeping close to the curved wall. Another torch sat in the wall 10 paces away. Jem edged forwards until his feet neared the reach of its light. He pointed to the tunnel's end, but Lauren had already seen them. 2 guards stood there, 50 paces away or more, at a joint where the tunnel split both left and right. In the wall opposite the split lay a small hallway, no more than 6 paces long, and at the end of that hallway stood a tall door made of wood. "There," said Jem. "That is the hidey hole." Lauren looked it over. The wood seemed thick and strong, and she saw the gleam of a metal lock at the handle. The walls bore many torches, and their burning light made it hard to see much more detail from so far away. "What does she keep in there?" said Lauren. "Anything special to her? Clothes, souvenirs? Sometimes the big boys, those are 2 of them there, will steal something of unusual value and she will stow it in the hidey hole. None of us are allowed down here except the big boys she sends to guard it. I have only been here before because I was her favorite." Lauren heard the twinge of pain in his voice and sought to reassure him by putting a comforting hand on his shoulder. He looked up at her but did not smile. "That is it then. What now?" She pursed her lips. "Now we find a way to—" A clanging screech tore through the tunnel. Lauren's fingers tightened so hard on Jem's shoulder she feared she might draw blood. The door to the hidey hole swung open, and Auntie emerged. One more boy she had with her, following at her heels like a massive dog. "It is her," said Jem. "We need to go." "Hold a moment. Why?" Lauren did not answer, but only watched. After the boy stepped out behind her, Auntie turned and closed the door. She pulled something from the neck of her tunic and fiddled with the handle a moment. "A key for that lock," thought Lauren, and then turned and walked down the short hallway leading out. The guards straightened their postures at Auntie's approach, like soldiers coming to attention. Auntie stepped up to one of the guards, reaching up to wrap her arms around his neck. She yanked his head down and placed her mouth on his. Lauren could not see at this distance, but she grimaced as she imagined details. Auntie stepped away, seized the other boy, and did the same. Neither boy wrapped his arms around her, nor did either let the kiss linger over long. "What? Does she?" "Any boy has to kiss her when she wants it, and more besides." Jem's voice had grown suddenly small, so quiet that Lauren could barely hear it. "If you do not, she will hurt you. You learn quick. Some of the boys like it all right, especially the other things she does. Most of us do not." Lauren looked at him sharply. Jem's gaze did not rise to meet hers. Her throat felt suddenly dry, and Lauren felt the slow, burning anger rise within her again, the rage she could never summon in the birchwood, but which always seemed so near to her now. There was no greater crime under the king's law. This was the darkest of deeds, punishable by immediate execution. Her attention returned to Auntie, fury now casting a haze over her vision. The weremage walked forwards, leaving the 2 guards behind and coming down the tunnel with only the one she had had in the room. Lauren grabbed Jem's shoulder hard. He whirled with fearful eyes. Together they slunk back, utterly silent, and vanished behind the corner. Jem led her down the tunnel until they found a small alcove a pace deep. "Here," he said, his voice a sharp whisper. "It is not big enough." "Trust me," said Jem, and he strode in. In a moment he vanished, ducking around a corner within the alcove. Lauren blinked and followed him into the darkness. Within the alcove she found that it curved away sharply to either side. They huddled there together, hiding in the darkness with no other sound than the gently flowing water of the nearby channel. But soon Lauren heard something else, soft, padded footsteps approaching. She leaned out slightly, just the edge of her eye peeking around the corner. In a moment or two she saw her, Auntie, strolling idly by as though on an afternoon walk. The boy walked behind her, all height and muscle, bare arms looking like they could crush a skull between them. Mayhap they could. Almost Lauren listened to her inner voice, the voice that screamed for her to emerge, to attack, to leap upon Auntie and tear at the weremage until she lay bleeding in the sewer. But Auntie had her knives, and Lauren had only her hunting blade. And most importantly, Nightblade did not kill. So Lauren let them go. Just before the footsteps faded to silence, she heard Auntie's smooth, languid laugh drifting out of the darkness, chuckling at some remark of the boys. Lauren turned back to Jem. "I will take back what she stole, and mayhap not now, but one day I will make her rue the moment she thought to cross either of us. How does that sound?" Lauren had never seen Jem's eyes wider. "You will get no complaints from me," he said. Good. Let us start with my dagger. I have had an idea. Nightblade, Chapter 28. Jem was not overly enthusiastic about the plan. They could catch me and gut me like a fish, he said. You are only saying that because you are the one they will chase, said Lauren. But they will never catch you. I have heard and seen for myself how fast you can run. Jem glared at her. This is different, and you know it. Lauren put a hand on either of his shoulders and rocked him back and forth until he could not help a small smile. Come now, you've proved to me already that Auntie had no better boy on the roofs. You have shown your worth in the sewers many times over. Do you really think they will be able to lay a hand upon you? Who knows this place better than you? No one, said Jem reluctantly. As I thought. Come now, destiny awaits. I am the one who must wait in plain sight for someone to sneak up behind me and slip a knife between my ribs. Mollified, Jem stepped with her from the alcove and led her around the corner, back to the tunnel that led to the hidey hole. In truth, Lauren felt much less confidence than she showed Jem. It seemed a good plan, but she was a stranger here. She knew little and only hoped that the gaps in her knowing would not cost the boy his life. She could not bear to think of that. But neither could she bear the thought of walking away. They snuck back to the edge of the torchlight, the tunnel stretching long before them. Lauren pointed to where a small plank bridge spanned the sewer's channel to the right of the guards. You will want to avoid that, she whispered. They will cross more easily there. On the other side, they will be cautious. Jem nodded. His eyes had grown large, and Lauren could feel him tremble beneath her hand. She thought of speaking more words of encouragement, but that might only rekindle his doubts. She decided upon a gentle nudge instead. Go, Master Pickpocket. Remember, keep out of their reach until you are out of sight, and then disappear. Right, said Jem. Very well. Here I go. Do not let this be for nothing. He bounced on the balls of his feet twice, and then with a sharp cry, he ran pell-mell down the tunnel towards the guards. Help! Help! They're coming! Both boys shot to attention at their posts, looking at each other and then Jem. Who is coming? The guard's voice boomed low and resonant in the dank space. Constables, said Jem. We have been betrayed! The guards reached for the cudgels at their waists, but then one leaned forwards. Wait a minute. Auntie's looking for you. She is indeed, said Jem. He skidded to a stop at the end of the tunnel, hooked a left, and disappeared around the corner. With a cry of fury, both guards gave chase, cudgels clutched in meaty fists. It had been her idea, but still, Lauren marveled for a moment how easily it had worked. She stole down the tunnel and paused at the corner to peek around it. Torches stretched down the left-hand tunnel as far as she could see, but she saw no sign of Jem or the guards. She gathered herself and then leaped across the channel in one quick jump. She did not hesitate, but darted into the small hallway that led to the hidey hole door. There it stood, dark and imposing. The wood looked old, ancient even, but sound and without a trace of rot. Polish still covered its surface, and as Lauren put a hand against it, she found it dry as a bone, not damp as she would have expected. The door had no damage, save a grid of indents across its surface. She studied them, curious. They spaced perfectly across the wood, a mesh with 6 fingers of space between each point, from one wall to the other. She threw one quick glance over her shoulder and then put a hand on its knob. It did not budge. Locked. Sky and stars. She kneeled to look at the lock. It was a massive thing, made from well-wrought iron that bore no rust. That was odd. Lauren felt a prickling along the back of her neck. Could it be some form of enchantment, perhaps? Some fire mage's spell to keep water from metal? That was neither here nor there. Lauren claimed no expertise with locks, but Bracken had taught her something about them, for in his tales Menet had had a belt of tools, small intricate spikes and twisted prongs that could breach any door. She knew that a lock consisted of tumblers, little metal levers that one had to push in the right order to open. Bracken had once carried a big padlock in his pack and had let Lauren toy around with it, using the end of his twisted knife. She had opened it once or twice, but only after much prodding and a great deal of time, and that lock had been a much larger, cruder affair than the one before her now. Yet it did not appear that she had much choice. Let us see what I remember. Lauren drew her hunting knife from her boot. It had a broader blade than Bracken's and did not twist as his had. She could fix that, Mayep. Thrusting the tip of it into the lock, she carefully pulled it to the side. The metal bent obligingly, almost too well, and Lauren eased off for fear it might snap. Now she had her poker. She inserted it into the lock, shoving a bit to make it fit, and felt around for the tumblers. The dagger scritched against the iron, and Lauren became suddenly aware of how quiet the hallway had grown. Only trickling water sounded behind her. She looked over her shoulder again. She could see only the blinking torchlight stretching down the tunnel, yet she felt the presence of some unseen danger. She turned back to the lock, and as she probed again, she felt something give. A small piece of metal, hardly anything at all, but it had to be a tumbler. Lauren heaved a great sigh and probed for another. Her knife scraped back and forth, seeking the things out. Mayhap she had probed too far. Lauren withdrew the knife slightly, almost to the entrance. With another snick, something gave. She nearly cried out in triumph. Then there came a sound, and Lauren looked up just in time to see the ceiling falling upon her. She had time only to drop to the ground and throw her hands over her head. Something snatched at the back of her shirt, dragging her forward so that her head struck the door. Boom! The sound deafened her. But nothing struck her. No rocks or boulders crushed her. Lauren opened her eyes and raised her head. So, that explains the indents. A huge spiked iron grate had swung down from the ceiling and slammed into the wooden door. Had Lauren remained on her knees, or, worse, been standing, she would now be impaled on a dozen jutting protrusions. The bottom spikes had snatched at her clothing as the thing fell and were now embedded in the door. Wincing from where her head had struck the wood, she tried tugging it free, but it would not move. Growling in disgust, she loosened the ties at her throat and freed herself from the cloak. Now the grate stood between her and the door, but through its holes Lauren could still reach the lock, and the door's hinges were on the inside. If she could get the thing open, mayhap she could lift the trap enough to slide beneath it. She bent to the task, slipping the tip of her hunting knife into the lock once more. But now the gate blocked her way, the grid making each movement awkward, blocking her arms as she sought to twist and turn them in her hunt for the tumblers. Lauren gave another frustrated growl. She must move the gate. Mayhap she could prop it up with something. She looked around but saw nothing. Very well, she would push it back to the ceiling. If it stuck, she would continue her picking. Now that she knew what to expect, if she tripped it again, she could get out of the way. Lauren wrapped her hands around the bottom of the grid and pulled upward. It screeched, and she dropped it like white-hot metal. They would hear her all across the 9 lands, and the thing weighed so much that Lauren doubted she could reach the ceiling with it. Frustrated, she knelt again and went for the lock with her knife. "Lauren!" A hand came down on her shoulder, yanking her back. Lauren screamed and whirled, slashing wildly with the knife. Jem cried out and tumbled backwards, crashing hard into the stone floor. "Jem, what under the sky? I nearly killed you." "You could not have cut me if you tried," said Jem, his nose in the air, even as he found his feet. "I came back to warn you. They are on their way. You must go." "I have not got in." Jem glanced at the door. "In or not, any moment they will be upon us. We must fly before the chance to do so vanishes." Lauren gave the door another look. "If I could only... It is just in there, Jem. Do you know anything about locks?" He tugged at her hand. "I told you, only the older boys learn that. We must go. I think one of them has gone for Auntie. Come, come!" Lauren growled and followed him, running again into the sewer's gloom.
This has been a production of Legacy Books. Written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. Today's letter is tea. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.